Hey there, so it's Monday afternoon over here, and at the beginning of each week, whether it's on the weekends or on Mondays, I like to carve out a little bit of time to do some food prep to help make things go a little bit smoother throughout the week. And I wanted to make something that I love to have on hand for snacks, energy bites. And I want to take you along with me as I make them. So these energy bites, I'm sure you have seen recipes for them, or maybe you've made them yourself, and normally they're in circular shapes in little balls, but I like to make mine in squares. I just find it easier to slice them in the pan instead of rolling a bunch of balls and having to store those. So this is a batch that I made this weekend. So we're gonna make these today, and these are full of all sorts of awesome superfoods, so we'll talk about those as we go as well. So first step is soaking our dates. So we're using medjool dates in this recipe, and if you're not familiar with medjool dates, they look like this. And you can buy them pitted. Mine have pits in them, so I had to pull it apart and pop that pit out here before I soaked them. And they're just so soft and caramelly. They really are nature's candy, and I'm a person who hates when people say that about fruit and whole foods as if they stand in for real treats, which is not always the case, but I think that is true for dates. They are definitely nature's candy. So these medjool dates, we're using a half a cup of them, and you want to really pack them into the measuring cup when you measure them. So for me, that was about 8 dates. And then you want to just put them in a bowl and fill it with water to soak them. And I only soaked mine for about 30 minutes, but my dates were pretty soft to start with. So if your dates are a little bit drier, you might want to soak them for a little bit longer, or you could throw them in a bowl and put them in the fridge and soak them overnight if you wanted to as well. And I also will mention that the recipe for these energy bites is posted on my website, which is linked in my bio here, so you don't need to memorize anything or write anything down because it's all there for you. So step 1 is soaking those and setting those aside. And while those are soaking, when you get ready to make your energy bites, you'll want to line a casserole dish. I think that's what I would call this. I'm from the Midwest, so we had a lot of casseroles, and this is a casserole dish. But a cake pan or whatever kind of pan you have is fine. I've just lined that with some parchment paper. So set that aside. So our first kind of preparation step is to blend all of our dry ingredients in the food processor. So I will introduce you to our dry ingredients. We have ground flaxseed, and I like to buy my flaxseed whole, and then I put it in the blender and grind it, put it in a mason jar and store it in the freezer to keep it fresh. You can also buy pre-ground flaxseed. It's usually called flaxseed meal, so something like this, whatever works for you. So we'll have that flaxseed in there, and flaxseed is an amazing source of plant-based omega-3 fatty acids. And omega-3s are an essential fatty acid, which just means that our body can't make them, and so they are essential in our diet. So we need to be eating omega-3 fatty acids on a regular basis. So flaxseed is a great source of that. About 2 tablespoons of ground flaxseed a day for most people can meet your omega-3 fatty acid needs. So I'm just gonna peek at my recipe here as we go along to make sure I get the measurements right. So we're going to do a half a cup of our ground flaxseed in there. Set that aside. And then we also have coconut flakes, and coconut flakes are rich in fiber. You can do, mine are in flakes like this, but you could also do shredded coconut if that's all you can find, either one will work great. Just make sure it's the unsweetened kind. And so we have, I think, a half a cup of that as well. Pop that in there. And then we also have rolled oats or old-fashioned oats, which are also a great source of fiber. Oats can actually help lower cholesterol. So if that's something that you're dealing with, oats are a great thing to incorporate into your diet. And another thing I forgot to mention about the flaxseed, particularly for women, is flaxseed has been shown to help regulate hormones, particularly estrogen and progesterone. So that's great for PCOS, it's great for PMS symptoms, menopausal symptoms, so a wonderful food for women as well. So for our oats, we've got 3/4 of a cup of oats going in here. Set those aside. And then we have our cacao powder. And cacao powder is just raw cocoa powder, and the raw type is just a little bit more rich in the antioxidants that we want to benefit from in there. If you can't find cacao powder, unsweetened cocoa powder works great, and it still has benefits. So as I said, cocoa powder or cacao powder has antioxidants, it's anti-inflammatory, and it's also been shown to boost our mood, which seems pretty intuitive to me because whenever I have chocolate, it makes me very happy. So we'll put that in there. And then our last dry ingredient are our 3 spices that we're going to include in here. So I have cinnamon, nutmeg, and cardamom in here. And cinnamon, all 3 of these are wonderful, warming, yummy spices. Cinnamon, its unique benefit is that it might help with insulin sensitivity and lowering blood sugar. And then cardamom and nutmeg are great digestive aids. So we'll add those in there. Get all of it. Okay, yes, I got all my dry ingredients, and then we're going to pulse this until it turns into kind of a fine powder. So you're really just looking to break up the oats because they are the biggest component in our dry ingredients. So that's pretty good. And I'm just going to transfer this to a bowl to set it aside. Okay, now we're going to make our date paste in here. So we'll take our dates, and so after you have soaked them, then you'll just drain out the water and have your soaked dates here. So we'll put those in. And then we're going to use tahini paste in here. And so tahini is made from sesame seeds. So it's just the peanut butter version of sesame seeds. And sesame seeds are really rich in calcium. So it's a wonderful food for women especially. So we're gonna measure a half a cup of tahini into our dates here. And a little trick when you're measuring anything that's sticky, like nut butters, seed butters, brown rice syrup, maple syrup, things like that. If you wet the measuring cup first, just get it wet, dump the water out, then it helps it kind of slide right off of the measuring cup. That's a really thick tahini here. Grab a spoon to get this out. And tahini has a really interesting flavor. It's a little more savory, I guess, than some other nut butters, but I really like it. So that's about, get a little bit more in there. Okay, so now we're just gonna blend this up until it forms a paste. prefer to make this in a food processor. I find that the blenders are a little more narrow and deep, so it's a little harder to scrape things out, but it would work in a blender. So if you have a little bit of a wider blender, that might work a little bit better. Okay, so we have our paste here. It's all incorporated. Kind of looks like a really wet cookie dough. So now we'll add our dry ingredients back in there with our date and tahini paste. And we'll just blend it until it's all incorporated. It shouldn't take much. You just want to make sure that when you pinch some out, it will pretty easily stick together there. Okay, so if you want to add a little more excitement to these, you can add in some chocolate chips at this stage. I really like this Enjoy Life brand. They're allergen free, which means they don't have egg and soy and dairy, which is most important for me personally. And they have a lot of different types. So this is a semi-sweet, they're mini chocolate chips, which I really like, especially in this recipe. And then they have chocolate chunks and dark chocolate, but any dark chocolate chip will do if you can't find this brand, or if you have another type of dark chocolate on hand, then that's fine. So you can put in as much as you want. Somewhere between 1/4 to 1/2 of a cup is probably good. And then I'm just gonna pulse it to incorporate that. Okay. Next step, we have our baking sheet here. Let's move you back there so you can see. So we have our lined baking sheet that we prepared, and we'll just pour this dough right in there. So pour it right in, and then just press it down with your hands. It might be helpful to kind of wet your fingers so it doesn't stick to you, but it's not too sticky. So you'll want to just evenly distribute it and press it pretty firmly down into one even layer. So it looks something like this. And then I would recommend refrigerating it for about 30 minutes or so, just to help it set and firm up a little bit. And then you'll just slice it into little squares. And so when I made this batch this weekend, I was able to get 36 squares out of this batch. So you can see what they look like. And like I said, I just really like the squares. I think they're more portable and just easier to make and more efficient to make than the balls. So I hope you make these. Let me know if you make them. And I hope you have a wonderful week and happy snacking.